Welcome to She's Probably Talking to Other Guys, a podcast all about assumptions, why we make them, and why they are absolutely useless in our lives. My name is Annie. I am your host. I am also the creator of the Banannie Diaries. I'm so excited that you're here joining me for the pilot episode of this podcast. Let's get into it. I'd like to introduce myself for a moment so that way I feel like you can get to know me a bit better. When I share blog posts or photos and videos, I find it tricky to convey my personality through those. So I'm going to give a quick intro, and then this whole process of creating this podcast and doing an episode every week, I know that my personality is definitely going to come through a bit more, so I'm really excited to share my life with you guys in podcast form now. So, in addition to my blog, I am a professional ballroom dancer. I compete professionally. I taught for over 11 years. I recently just started teaching again, which I love. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it makes me happy. My dance partner is my best friend. I'm sure you'll meet him along the way because I will eventually have some guests coming on here, but for now it's just going to be you and me. Let's start to get into episode 1. The title of this episode is What Did You Assume This Podcast Is About? Because I feel like when I initially say the name, she's probably talking to other guys. People have assumed that it's about relationships, like strictly about relationships. That was the number one response that I got when I would tell my friends what the name of this podcast was. And then when I explained that it was about assumptions that people make, obviously that was like the main assumption, was that it was strictly going to be about relationships, not assumptions as a whole. The name, she's probably talking to other guys, it came to me like a little bit at a time. I started off making these videos, which were me and like swimsuits or during like bikini photo shoots or behind the scenes of swimwear shoots. Mostly, I feel like it mostly was swimwear shoots where I felt like a total smoke show, but then it would transition into what I was actually doing while I was posting the video. I think if it wasn't the first one, it was close to the first one I posted. It was me on the beach somewhere, and it then translated into me Googling what I could feed a squirrel, because I have this little squirrel who comes to visit me because I started feeding him peanuts a while ago, and now he comes to see me every day. His name is Guillermo. I'm a fan of What We Do in the Shadows, and I don't know, I just started calling this little squirrel Guillermo. But the idea was, it's the assumption I'm talking to other guys, but in reality I'm actually sitting there feeding this little squirrel some peanuts. So in the moment when it kind of hit me that this was officially the name of the podcast, somebody went into my phone. It wasn't a stranger, I know this person. They went into my phone and thought it was a good idea to open up my best friend and I's chat in my messages. That's just a bad idea, first of all. Just like the context of that conversation is just a mess. If you think about it for a second, like if some random person who had no idea what the context of your best friend and your conversation was, and they just went into your phone and read it, I don't know, mine is wild. Like absolutely wild. But anyway, this person went into my phone because they thought that I was talking to somebody else, another guy. I wasn't, like I totally wasn't, but my best friend and I, we have nicknames for people. we like use code names instead of their actual names in our conversations. Not because we ever thought somebody was actually going to go into our phone. I mean, I guess it kind of came full circle for me because when this person read it, they had no idea who I was talking about. But basically, they went into my phone, they read like a couple messages. I don't even know how far they went in. And then immediately started assuming that I was talking to somebody else, right? So then it became this mess out of nothing because I wasn't actually talking to anyone else. And now I had to like have a serious conversation with this person. Like, first of all, don't go on my phone. Second of all, you made an assumption based off of a few text messages that you read that I was talking to someone, when in reality, I was not at all. So after that whole situation kind of calmed down and like explanations were given, it kind of hit me that, okay, I think this is the name of the podcast. Now that I've explained the name is more about assumptions, this is not a podcast strictly about relationships or talking to other guys. We're going to be diving into assumptions in so many different aspects of life. The first few episodes are going to be geared a little bit towards relationships, only because when I was starting to plot this out, that was kind of just the path that it kind of seamlessly took. So the first few episodes will be geared a little bit more towards like friendships and relationships, but then we're really going to start to steer off into some unknown territory and dive into some other assumptions. So this is just a friendly reminder. I'm not a therapist, a psychologist, or an expert in human behavior. Everything shared here is based on personal experience, opinions, and a lot of conversations over coffee with some friends. If you're struggling with something deeper, I always encourage chatting with a licensed professional. This is a judgment-free assumption checking zone, so take what resonates and leave the rest. What even is an assumption? So I have some definitions here. We're going to go through them. These are from the internet. So an assumption as a noun, a thing that is accepted as true or as certain to happen without proof. That is from the Oxford English Dictionary. A psychological definition is a belief or statement taken for granted without empirical evidence. Assumptions often influence perception, judgment, and decision-making unconsciously. That is from the American Psychological Association, APA Dictionary of Psychology. In a communication context, assumptions are understated beliefs or ideas that guide our interpretation of information and shape the way we interact with others, often leading to misunderstandings when not clarified. That source is Adler, R.B., Rosenfeld, L.B., and Proctor 2, Roman numeral 2, R.F. Interplay, the process of interpersonal communication, Oxford University Press. Okay, so based off of all of that, I think we can relate that, especially the last one where it says often lead to misunderstandings when not clarified. That is exactly the example that I gave earlier about my friend going through my messages and assuming that I was talking to someone else when I wasn't. So that led to like a massive misunderstanding. Where do assumptions come from? We're going to talk about fear. So I feel like sometimes we make assumptions based out of fear. So we relate it to a past experience, or it's something that we are afraid to step into. So maybe we make an assumption and kind of ruin it in a sense before we even have a chance to try something new. Let's use an example. Like maybe you have a crush on someone and you're really afraid to talk to them, so you make an assumption, oh, they're probably talking to somebody else anyway. Haha, the name of the episode. But I feel like that tends to be a really obvious example. So maybe you made that assumption that they were talking to someone else because you were afraid that they were, or you're afraid to see like what could actually happen if you did talk to this person. Maybe your assumption that you're making is because you're insecure. Like maybe you applied for a job and now you're worried, oh, like I'm probably not good enough or I'm not qualified enough for this position. That's an assumption right there as well. Just automatically thinking to yourself that you're not good enough for this. So that would be an assumption, I would say, based out of insecurity, because you're just insecure about applying for this job or you're insecure about what's going to happen. So that would be one of my examples there. Past experiences, of course, they always kind of creep up on you there. Like, for example, I don't know, maybe I had a disagreement with someone in the past. And now, assuming if I have a conversation with this person, it's just going to lead to another disagreement again, because that's what happened in the past. So I think that it's very easy to fall into assumption making. And know that you're not alone with this, by the way. When I really started planning episodes for this podcast, I started noticing like how easy it was for me to make assumptions about things, right? And I feel like working on this podcast has actually helped me to not make so many assumptions anymore. I mean, I still do, but I think that I catch myself and I check myself now when I make an assumption. So like if, I don't know, let's say I'm at the gym and somebody looks mad. I assume that they look mad. I assume that they're mad, but maybe they just have an RBF. I mean, I do. So I think that now I'm so much more aware, and I want to challenge you, if you could like count how many assumptions you made in one day, or if you can check yourself whenever you make an assumption, whether it's about someone or something or an experience in your life. I found that to be very interesting when I started diving a bit deeper into this podcast, was I actually realized how many that I made, and now I need to like check myself. How do assumptions distort perception and communication? I feel like this is a really big one, because again, it's all kind of like weaving into one another with things that I've already mentioned, but I feel like we can very easily perceive a person or a situation just based on the assumption that we made. Like we see somebody driving a really nice car and our assumption is, oh, that person must be wealthy, or oh, they must be well off, or oh, they must have a really good job. Like those are all examples of assumptions that we're making, but we have literally no idea if it's even accurate or not. That person literally could have just like gone and rented the car for the day. Like we literally have a zero idea. And then now our perception of this person has already been shaped and we haven't even met them yet, right? Or we haven't even interacted with them yet. And I feel like that's just such a loss for us, because now we've already like judged this person. We've prejudged them. We've put them into like this little box that we made just by looking at what car they drove. I mean, maybe it's not a total loss, but you don't know. And I think that that's like the whole point, is we make these assumptions. Now we have this perception about someone which may like be highly inaccurate. And in a sense, our perception of them, I feel like, is related to how we're going to communicate with this person now, right? So if we stick with that same concept of, okay, they drive a really nice car. Maybe we also just made that like, okay, they're out of my league. We shouldn't be talking to them because they're driving a really nice car. So now we're not going to talk to them, right? So now that perception has completely shaped the way that we communicate, or our lack of communication with this person, all because we assumed one thing and related what we thought about them to the car we saw them drive. I feel that it's completely normal human behavior to make these assumptions about people. So I don't ever foresee assumptions stopping. I just think that we're selling ourselves a little short when we start to make a lot of assumptions about people, because are they true? Are we accurate? Are we not accurate? I don't know. Like some assumptions that I've made have been completely off. Like completely off. last week or the week before, I don't remember. I was texting one of my friends and he irritated me. Like, he really irritated me. So then, what did I do? Sabrina Carpenter's Man Child came out that day. And I poked fun at the situation by making a video about it, saying that you played with my feelings and now my best friend's mom knows all about you, right? And then after I posted it, our conversations got really weird, and then they got non-existent for a few days. So then I was like, oh my gosh, I was just poking fun at this whole situation. Then I got myself paranoid, and my assumption was, oh my god, he's mad at me because I made that video. And then fast forward to today, and he was literally his normal self and had zero recollection of the initial conversation that pissed me off in the first place. So again, that was a total waste of my time assuming that he was mad at me. He was literally not. He the conversation was in one ear and out the other. But again, that's kind of just more of an example of what a waste of time that assumption was, thinking that he was mad at me. Let's go into another assumption that I feel like is common. I feel like I already touched on this a little bit though. The one about they're too good for me. So maybe they drive a nice car, they dress nice. It's a lot of superficial things that distort our perception of someone. So maybe you see someone, she's wearing Christian Louboutins, right? The classic red bottom, and we're like, we immediately assume she's got money. Or maybe nowadays, I don't know, do people assume she has a sugar daddy or a sugar mama? I don't know. But small things like that. Or you see someone with a Gucci bag or a Fendi bag, something like that, and then we start making assumptions of how they're dressed. Or it can go completely the opposite way, where people have more of an Adam Sandler style, and we assume how super casual they are, and we don't know anything about them, but we start making assumptions based on how they're dressed and how super casual they always are. And then we could be completely wrong, and then maybe one day we see them all dressed up and we're like, oh, I'm trying not to swear so much so I don't have to come back in and bleep stuff. I mean, I was gonna say, oh, we totally assumed wrong, but I'm gonna try not to swear as much. But then I feel like I'm not really being me if I don't swear. Anyway, focus. So again, going back to how superficial things, the way they're dressed, the car they drive, they can easily distort our thoughts about someone. And again, how we might just be talking ourselves out of even getting to know this person because we made that assumption. Let's go into, again, one that's tied more into relationships and friendships. They already know how I feel. So assuming that somebody already knows how you feel about them or where you've placed them in your life, that can really seriously change how you communicate with this person. I mean, if you're getting upset because you think that somebody knows how they made you feel, this person probably has no idea. Example, going back to the texting thing that I mentioned before about how somebody upset me the other day via text. They didn't even know that they upset me because I didn't say it. It was just a friendly conversation, but then it turned into something that I wasn't loving. So anyway, I never actually said that I was annoyed by the conversation or that I was pissed off in any way. So that's on me, because then I was like, do they know? And he had no idea. Still has no idea. I brushed it under the rug because it's not the end of the world, whatever. But again, it's assuming that they already know how I feel, which this is something that I'm sure wildly influences relationships or breakups or arguments. Assuming that maybe I assume this person knows that they should bring me flowers when they see me? Right? Did you tell them? If you didn't tell them, how do they know? But then, like, again, maybe I'm sure somebody out there assumes that, and then it's just kind of like upsets the balance because this person's mad now that the person didn't bring them flowers. Something like that. It's just a lot of assumptions that we make are just gonna mess with your life instead of just communicating with someone. So as awkward as it can be to have communication, I feel like that's part of what we really need to do is work on our communication with people. Again, I'm not a professional. This is just based on life experience. I feel like I already touched a little bit on why these assumptions are useless. They add stress, they add anxiety, they can cause unnecessary arguments, or maybe it can even like cause the end of a relationship or a friendship because we made assumptions about the situation or we made assumptions about this other person. So let's go through making assumptions versus clarity and clarifying like the situation. It's the idea, if you want to know, you just need to ask sometimes, even though it can be super uncomfortable. Sometimes just being direct is the best way to get rid of an assumption. Let's go through the definition of clarity. So the formal definition, the quality of being coherent and intelligible, the ability to be easily understood. That's from the Oxford English Dictionary. Psychology, communication spin. In communication, clarity means expressing thoughts, feelings, or expectations in a way that reduces confusion and leaves little room for misinterpretation. I really like that one because assumptions lead to interpreting based on what we've just assumed, versus clarity is maybe I'm like very direct. Let's use a super simple example. Do you like purple? Yes, I do like purple. Clarity, right? So something like that. I think that the idea of being clear in our communication will resolve a lot of problems. But again, assumptions aren't going anywhere. We do it all the time. And that's why we're here, because we're going to talk through some wild assumptions as we move forward, whether it's just me doing a solo episode for you or there's some guests on. I already have some guests in my mind, and I'm really excited to grow this because I have a list already of guests that I would love to have. So I'm totally manifesting that. But before we're done, one more topic. So what are we going to do instead of making assumptions? We're going to maybe be curious, not lead our assumption that we made to completely like close a door, right? So back to my assumption that was wrong earlier of, oh, my friend's mad at me. Because I've been working on this podcast, I was able to sit with myself and say, okay, you're making an assumption that he's mad at you, right? Maybe that's not the situation. Maybe he's just busy. Maybe he didn't even see your video, which, completely honest, like, even if he saw it, I don't even think that he would have had any idea that it was based on him, because he didn't even know that I was upset in the first place. So anyway, again, like, so many assumptions just in like that one conversation. We'll go through it in depth one day, but I feel like I need my best friend as my guest for that whole conversation. So we're gonna save that. I'll schedule time with my best friend, I promise, and we'll actually like get into it. We're gonna replace assumptions with curiosity. So we're gonna check ourselves when we make an assumption and not completely close a door unless we know something is fact, right? Because clarity. So clarity, it gives us very little room, if any at all, to misinterpret something, right? So we're going to try to replace assumptions with curiosity. Maybe we're going to ask open-ended questions. So if we have an assumption, maybe we'll politely go up and ask an open-ended question instead of assuming something, right? And let's normalize checking in with people, right? Like, I totally could have checked in with my friend and been like, bro, you mad at me? But I didn't. I decided to wait and like let it simmer in my head and overthink it. But like, normalize checking in with people, because if they are your people, they're going to respond. And maybe they'll respond with, yeah, I am mad at you. Or maybe it'll be like in my case, like as if the conversation never happened. But normalize checking in, because if these are people that you care about and like that is reciprocated and they care about you too, they'll have a conversation with you, or they shouldn't mind clarifying that with you, because you're friends and you really are, like, you have a real connection with this person, whatever level it may be on. So normalize checking in if you are making an assumption. Otherwise, this is going to be drama. All right. This is the beginning of a very exciting road. I already have so many other episodes planned out and ready to go, from dating to careers to friendships and so much more. Comment, send me a message if you want me to specifically dive into a topic. I will decide if it fits in and maybe when it fits in, if it fits in with where I'm headed with this podcast. But thank you so much for tuning in. I'm really excited you are here on this journey. And the next episode, things we assume are red flags, but maybe they aren't. Follow me, subscribe. She's probably talking to other guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I can't wait to talk with you next time.